Hello, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and being patient with technological um,
Challenges.
challenges with the elderly. We have an elderly friend whose wife was very badly injured, and he had a flip phone, and he was trying to call 911, and he panicked so much that he could dial in a 9, and then just all
Couldn't
these
hear.
other numbers were coming up. And we had such empathy for him because as old people, you can't see, you can't figure it out, and you get stressed, and it gets worse. And
And your thumb always hits the wrong
yeah,
letter or
he,
number
she was
every
okay.
time.
They
Yeah,
did
she's
okay.
okay.
He's still devoted to his flip phone because she gave him hers to call, and 911 was fast, and she was fine. Crazy. So we are really happy to be kicking off 2023 with all of you here. Thank you so much for coming, for showing up for these online talks, for doing your practice and coming up with questions and feeding us questions so that we come up with ideas for these talks. And we came up with the idea for a talk about courage, partly due to the fact that this world has been through, as we've said many times, and as you've all experienced, it's been through so much in the last 3 years. When we were here in this very spot in Thailand, and suddenly the the pandemic hit. And so we are really, really glad to be here with those of you who have had the courage to pull your way through in your own unique way through this pandemic. But we were also deeply inspired by the courage that Zelensky showed when he came to the United States and spoke. Many of you may have seen it in front of the Senate. And it was such a deeply moving speech where he and was expressing the extent of profound courage that so many people in Ukraine are embodying, and that there are times in this world where what one needs to do is to dip into the resource that we would call courage. That in yoga, the word for courage is virya,
Yeah.
and that it is an important quality that we try to embody. So Zelensky is an amazing example of what it means to have courage, because part of what he brings to it is humor. He brings this solid, gentle and yet firm and deep conviction, and he also has something far bigger than himself that he is working for. So we'll
Yeah.
talk about the
It's the
meaning.
ability to actually do something,
Yeah,
to act what I think the upaya, to act skillfully, is what the courage gives you, rather than, and which on some occasions is not to do anything, but on other occasions is do something.
yeah,
And a lot of the time it's do something.
yeah.
So
And sort of the epitome in yogic um, mythology and in yogis and yoginis' minds, the epitome of it is Hanuman, someone who's courageous.
yeah, Hanuman. And so yeah, we won't do Hanuman asana on this small screen. It could hurt the technology. But Hanuman, uh, as you know, is actually he's he has the body of a divine monkey, with and he's very famous for this, having placed his, just to show what's in his heart, he put his fingers on his chest, and he went, and in his chest were Sita and Rama, his beloved, are the two aspects. But at the same time, he's extremely strong. He has an open heart, but he's totally, what we would say, his kidney wings have moved into his elbows, and he has this beautiful deep eyes that, because he's in love with his beloved. And so there's a famous story. I'll get to the story quickly. There was a bad guy who was actually yoga gone bad, a guy named Ravana, who was even better than the wealthy autocrats of today. He used yoga technology, and he developed through narcissistic yoga, we could call it. He took over much of the world, and particularly Sri Lanka, which was his, what is currently Sri Lanka. And he had developed 10 heads for the 10 different yogic perfections, none of which were enlightenment, but they were like, and he had turned through his alchemical magic things into gold. So his kingdom was largely gold, and he loved Ravana. And then he heard this story about this guy named Rama, who was Vishnu, and Rama had this beautiful quality that was his inner, which was his manifesting power of space, time, language, everything, called Sita, and he arranged to steal her because he thought, oh, this guy, he has the real secret. And he made this big mistake of stealing Sita from Rama and taking her to Sri Lanka and holding her captive, and then trying to win her over with his good looks, which was, and he had 10 heads, 10 great heads. And also he had more money than anybody in the universe at the time. And so this was not cool, because he didn't know who Sita was, and he didn't know who he was. But he was intoxicated with money, power, and he's what we call yoga gone bad, is Ravana. And so Hanuman, who loves them, he has this power of, he could shrink down to the size of, even smaller than a mouse, but he was this divine monkey. Or he could expand himself into being, thousands and thousands of meters high. And so he shrank, and he snuck into the different palaces, and he found Sita, and Sita was just like, waiting. And then he said, oh, I'll just go ask Ravana, because Ravana was very pious. And so he went and he asked Ravana, and he went into Ravana's throne room, and Ravana was sitting up on his, divine, beautiful throne, and he wanted this little monkey to sit on the floor. So this was automatically, you have to submit to the authority of the autocrat. Okay, and this is in contrast to the way that the devotional or tantric yoga thing, in which it's different. You fall in love rather than submit to the power of the divine autocrat. And so he made Hanuman sit on the floor, and Hanuman was okay. And as Hanuman sat on the floor way down below Ravana, Hanuman's tail started to unwind. He had a magic tail, and he just sat on this coiled tail, which came up, 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 until he was just as high as Ravana. And Ravana, having never dealt with infinity, which is the tail, got so pissed off that he said, he just lost it because anger was his main thing. And he said, "We're going to burn your tail." And so he had his servants, who were all like trembling. I don't know what he had on them, but he had his servants come and they soaked Hanuman's tail in probably ghee, and then they lit it on fire. And and at that point, people didn't know that actually Sita, or Parvati, had incarnated as Hanuman's tail. So she was infinity. His tail was this divine infinity. And so it was arranged so that Hanuman wouldn't actually feel the discomfort of the fire. And he just jumped up and he flew up in the sky and he started to burn all of the palaces and then he burnt, the entire business. And this was completely, destroyed. Basically, Ravana's, because what he was proud of was all the gold in his cities. And then he then jumped into the ocean, and that put out all of the fire that was around him, except on Hanuman's tail, which was a magic tail of infinity, and then he couldn't get the tail fired even underwater. That's the power of oil burning, I guess. Divine ghee, of course, is divine. And so then he, and this is one of my favorite, and I'm not sure which scripture this story, but he found a remote. He probably went to Thailand and found a remote hermit who was, a teacher. And he said, "I can't get the fire in my tail to go out," and so the hermit said, "Oh, the only way you can get that fire to go out, because this is a fire that had to do with Shakti herself," he said, "you have to swallow your own tail." And people who aren't into yoga shouldn't even imagine that. But if you're into yoga, it's come time. So imagine you have a burning tail of infinity, and it's like, whoa, and you have to go, and you swallow it, and it'll have an immediate effect on the pelvic floor, and it will start to create Kachari Mudra and Yoni Mudra under the belly, and it'll cause the opening of the central channel. And this has everything to do with Virya, because Virya is that quality of the opening the central channel from the heart through just above the crown of the head, where the reservoirs of nectar or compassion are stored. And so Virya is the quality of opening the Udana Vayu from the heart up. And so when the heart opens, there's a sense of love. And it's not love for one's, you don't even know who the self is, but you're just experiencing the beloved and it's awesome. You can't even reduce it to a language. And so there's that joy of Nirodha, which a lot of people are afraid of, but it's like, sweet. And that's what Virya is. And so when we get the instruction, do the warrior pose, that means you have to awaken the heart, open the heart, and in the heart you're experiencing all beings, even Ravana and his associates. Okay, and
they come in different forms.
They come in many forms these days, and they seem to be all over the place. There's Ravana, and you experience them with this intelligent insight, and it has an immediate effect because we hold in our body, our samskars, our opinion of other people. We reduce them to theories and stories. Even we hold our own story, which is, and we're often hypocritical about it because we have our inner Ravana, but we project that out onto these autocrats because they're easy targets, and we don't see. And so then when you're doing Vira, so if I'm going to reach up in Virasana, the heart has to be open, and there's a sense of, I love the term intrinsic dignity, meaning I don't have to rely on the opinion of others, even my own narcissistic opinion of myself, to feel the satisfaction is just too nice. And so that has an effect in the body of opening the channel from the heart through the crown of the head, the nectar channel, the channel of compassion. And so that is reflected. And so when I reach up, the shoulder blades roll back and the heart stays open, even though the power of the kidneys, the power of the infinite tail comes into the elbow, and you can reach up like that. So it's what we would look at as an audience as heroic.
Yeah.
So,
And so by, this is one way that our asana practice helps us to really deal with daily situations where when you get to certain poses, or actually any pose, and you don't feel that sense of intrinsic dignity, or you don't feel the sense of expansion from the inside out, rather than instead you may experience your movements either in a yoga pose or just walking down the street as this sort of external charade, this external performance that is detached from the background, from your circumstances. And especially with something like virya, which is this quality, and you said it a number of times, it's a quality that has, in addition to this strength and this dignity, intrinsic dignity, it has profound compassion as a central part of it. And when you start looking at the confusion that people get into in terms of thinking, well, this is a courageous act, very often the element that is overlooked is the element of compassion, of other. So that true virya, true courage, has really at its root a sense of trust of the process, and of trust of oneself to interface within the process of whatever the complex situation that you might be dealing with is. So courage is when we face things, squarely, and summon in an embodied way this feeling of wholeness that is so whole that you as an individual are not torn away from your background, that you become part of the background that helps to facilitate meeting whatever the challenge is. So the real element of trust and compassion, along with strength and integrity, are present when we are truly experiencing a sense of courage.
Yeah. And that way, whatever action you take, because you'll never have, how it's going to affect you. You're open to feedback or communication, even with Ravana, because we got to help that guy. Even with Ravana, who is not a courageous being, that's why he's so mean. That's why he, exploits all these other beings. And if you're not doing it, in order to look good, then when you get feedback, you're able to adjust the action. And so it's good science to have that kind of courage. And bad science is when you're attached to the business deal you just made with some company or something, and you're going to become famous, get a Nobel Prize, And so you don't have virya, you don't have this intrinsic sense of dignity and satisfaction with that experience. And so you're doing bad science or bad knowledge. And we're all scientists, like it or not. People who hate science, that's just a stupid hypothesis. But and so what we're doing is we're creating the physical subtle alignment through the channels of the body of virya, even if you're in a situation where you don't feel very virya. And so, like in the Gita, Krishna was always saying, virya, stand up, have some virya, Arjuna. And it was basically like, oh. And so just with that posture, he was then able to feel, on a practical level, he was able to feel the relative circumstances, but then he was seeing that was all, the background of that was this divine infinity, so he was able to act more skillfully. I'm not sure it worked. We're still dealing with the consequences there.
And when we think of courage, often what happens is that, we see someone doing something like Zelensky or, many other people, Mother Teresa being courageous in their actions, Mandela being courageous in his actions. We then start to look at what courage is within ourselves or within others as a black and white proposition, that either you're courageous or you're cowardly. And so often when there is this, some sort of horrendous event that happens, people speak of someone being cowardly. I was talking to Richard about even from childhood we learn through stories like The Wizard of Oz. Oh, here's this lion who is supposed to represent courage, and he's the one who, that's what he needs from the Wizard of Oz, is his courage, because and Dorothy goes to him at some point and says, oh, you're just a coward. But really it's not that. Cowardice is the opposite of courage, I think. That cowardice is some way of manifesting courage, but with doubt, with confusion in the mind. So there is this intention to meet something, but then there is either confusion about oneself or about the ability that one has, because in fact, even in that story, and Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, was brilliant at really looking at the, psychological characters of the human condition, which are spoken of like Ravana. But he was, looking at the fact that truly what was wrong with the lion was that he doubted himself, not that he didn't have courage. He behaved in courageous ways. And so cowardice is an interesting way of sort of saying, oh, well, this is just a coward. And yet what's missing when we are not courageous is that we may have the intention to do something, but we have doubt, or we don't have clear intention, or we don't have a trust in ourselves or in the process. So it's almost as though courage takes those three elements and combines them into action that then has impact. And in fact, in a way, the opposite of courage is being a bully, where you have taken all of those elements, trust and intention, and meeting something head on with integrity.
Being a bully is
It's in a sense, it's a more accurate description of the opposite of courageous, because courageous has this intention behind it, whereas cowardice is usually something you people don't choose.
Yeah. And so, ironically, if you look at the bullies around the world, they're really,
You could call them cowards, but
you could call them cowards, even though they have the nerve of, hurting
yeah,
others. Uh, and they're doing that because they're completely confused.
yeah,
They need to.
yeah. And so it's
They
an
need to stop.
interesting thing to really look at courage within your own life, and to look at moments where people may have said to you, "Oh, that was, that was courageous of you," or where you have finished doing something, and it's quite unusual, I think, for someone to have done something that others see as courageous, for that person to then say, "Well, that was really courageous, good work. I'm glad I was courageous." Because courage, like kindness or like compassion, like you were saying, it's not something that you get brownie points for within your own, karmic bank account. And the only place you get brownie points for being courageous is in your ego structure, when you think you are courageous. But when you have this true sense of the virya that Virabhadrasana really sort of epitomizes, then all of that disappears. And when you have tapped into and added into that the embodied feeling of strength and compassion into that integrity, then you're able to see through the fears and the doubts and the confusions that befall you, that actually stop the courageous act from
Yeah,
happening.
you have the courage to actually witness the fear
Yeah.
without turning away from it. So you're not afraid of fear. And it's that whole funny thing of the endless chain of, oh, I see myself being angry at anger. And, so the mindfulness is just you see that and you don't turn away. You go, oh, then you judge that, oh, I'm being bad. And then but you're able to stick with it to see, even if it goes off on these silly chains of thought stories. And so that's actually the basic in meditation practice.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging to actually do
And
yoga that way.
And virya, or courage, is one of, in the Buddhist teachings, there are, 10 or sometimes spoken of as 6 perfections, these aspects of being,
Paramita.
the 6 paramitas, that are aspects of who we are, that you can really foster and allow to blossom. And virya is the 4th of
the
them.
4th.
And it's has prerequisites, in a sense, where
Oh.
the first is generosity,
Dana, giving.
dana.
I am able to actually give, which is pretty advanced. We're working on that.
Yeah.
And then Shila
Shila.
what is Shila?
Shila is moral ground or integrity.
Yeah.
And so you have to
Ground.
have this sense of generosity, which in the beginning can be, oh, I'm doing this because I'm giving and being a good person to give. But if you work with that long enough and get over yourself, which may take a few lifetimes for at least some of us, that you then start to have some sort of awareness into what it means to have ethics and to have a moral sense of integrity, because you are truly embodying this sense of seeing others.
Yeah. She embodies it. And then Kshanti,
Kshanti.
Paramita. Kshanti is, it's not Shanti, but Kshanti. And that basically means it's not satisfaction, but it's the ability to be with everything.
Yeah. Sometimes people, translate it as patience or tolerance or
Tolerance, yeah.
equanimity might, I mean, it's not exactly equanimity,
Yeah,
but being able to hold
it's
space.
like, yeah, the ability to pause button,
Yeah.
Conscious pausing, not distract. And then comes the virya, which is the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we're dropping to the internal states.
Yeah.
And that's that sense of internal, well, often translated as courage, but it's because of it's the samskara, the body, in all of its subtlety, has taken on this pattern of intrinsic satisfaction. And then comes the ability of dhyana, which is meditation, and that's the ability to really focus the mind using the nature of the mind, which is its own kind of religious, this is, its tendency, this is wonderful, this is where it's at, in all of its religious theories, you focus that way. And then, very important is the final one, which is pragya, which means you go beyond ordinary knowledge, and it's often translated as insight rather than oversight or wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
But pra is before any type of structure of knowledge or space and time. And so it's it's a suspension of space and time in the awe of like, whoa. And so.
And these elements, the 6 paramitas, they, you might sort of look at them as a hierarchical thing, but like all of these elements or all of these things that we talk about in yoga, they are deeply intertwined.
Yeah.
And so you loop back and you come back to them.
Yeah, like in yoga, they say, well, the first yama is, what is that first one? What is the first yama? Of the great vow.
Oh, the great vow.
I don't remember.
You don't remember.
No, I have to actually practice to find out. Okay. And ahimsa. Okay, that means just translate it as be nice or stop hurting others. And then ahimsa, and then the next one is.
Why?
What's the next one?
I don't remember. I'm off on this tangent right now.
Okay.
You want to cue me in?
But ahimsa is very advanced.
Yeah.
And so you can't really do ahimsa until you get to the deeper levels of samadhi. And then you go, oh, and samadhi you go, oh. Then you go back to the beginning.
Trust and cleanliness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was off on another tangent.
Yeah.
And the other one that gets in the way with courage is avidya, when you think you are separate from other things, and that really codifies and solidifies your your position, and it makes for trouble. And we wanted to. I had a thought, that as we were thinking this last week or so about this, that when it's helpful to have a couple of things that we just wrote down to consider when you meet circumstances that they don't have to be war, they don't have to be terrible, difficult challenges, but courage comes along sometimes in the face of everyday situations, and they're little seeds of courage that then train you to be. They're all techniques for being present, in a sense, for then waking up and finding a upaya, the skillful action that is appropriate for that moment. And and to look when you notice that you have found yourself in a difficult situation, to see if what kind of opposites are presenting themselves to you that could confuse your mind, that could confuse you from remembering that embodied feeling of virabhadrasana, of soft, gentle strength. And to look at stereotypes that you might be buying into, your own sort of personal stereotypes of who you are as a loser or who you are as a winner, which I don't have experience with that one. And see, well, wow, what is, am I buying into something that is either a cultural or a personal stereotype that's really causing, avidya, that's causing confusion? And am I doing harm in that way also? And then look at these things as simply distractions and come back into a memory or even a moment of just sitting up taller and remembering within the embodied form what it feels like to be in a physical form where you feel integrity, where you feel strength, where you feel compassion for others, and the epitome being virabhadrasana. And then take it from there, knowing that very often the most courageous thing you can do is simply show up, rather than try to muddle things up by meddling, but to be there.
Yeah.
And we've been thinking a lot about, with war and some of the difficulties in the world that are going on today, the real need for, this, what is confused as, the soul meaning of courage, which is the warrior, juxtaposed to the more feminine energy. But it's really neither one nor the other of those that are needed. The feminine part of being courageous, the element that women bring is, is very, very powerful and very important. Pulgai. And, but so also is the male aspect. We just don't want to get too far off on one side or the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being a woman in these days, it feels to me, as I get older and as I'm looking at what can we do with the time we have left, whatever that may be, you never know. And really, I think that, bringing forth these sort of archetypes of male, female, and living them and seeing them as they unite and as they contribute to a more harmonious world, seeing that neither alone is going to be the solution.
Yeah. And so that's the metaphor of, Hanuman, who's famous for being celibate, because he was, that the goddess, Parvati, incarnated as his tail.
Yeah.
And then he had to swallow his tail. And
Which
it's
is really taking things full circle.
full circle, yeah, literally. And yeah, and so the time has come. And so as we practice, I think we'll start to see that when you watch your own feelings in relation to others, that we go through these cycles where virya has to, in a sense, reboot frequently, like every, more than a few times a minute. And that's
That's a good
kind
thing.
yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah. And then we start to see, oh, others, wow. And that's the amazing insight that Ravana still needs to work on a little bit. Is others. Oh, there are other beings here. And maybe I can do something.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a little virya. So should we do a quick chant?
Sure. Do you feel like it?
I could.
Okay.
Okay. So this is from a chant from a text called the Devi Mahatyam, and it's about all the wonderful aspects and names of the goddess, who Parvati, and it goes through many different, and you'll have to research the text, and it goes through all of these different qualities of the goddess, which are all of the different qualities of mind, nature, time, and space, both good and bad. So all of the things that normally we say, oh, that's just, but it allows you to see that, oh, that is actually a composition of the Shakti, even my own crazy mental states and my own mistakes, and it allows you to keep going and see others, everything. And so this is just one verse. I'll just chant it like twice.
Okay.
Okay. But you have to sit straight and open your kidney wings and your heart at the same time. Almost impossible. Om Yadevi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Shakti Rupena Samstita Namastasyai, 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 Namo Namaha. So we thank you for your patience.
And your attendance, and your virya, and consistency. So we'll see you next time.